What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. And today I have my predictions for week 3 of college football. I'm excited. Love college football. Thank you for clicking on the video. I love to talk about college football. I make predictions, rants, highlights. And subscribe if you like college football, because I sure do. But getting into this video, I'm going to talk about how I did last week. And actually, before I get into that, I'm doing a new titling and editing thing, so we're going to see how this works. But, okay, before I get into the predictions, how I did last week. Week 2, overall, I predicted 10 games, and I went 8-2, which isn't terrible. Could have been better, but isn't terrible. I thought Florida was going to win, and I thought Baylor was going to win, and they both got upset. Against the spread, I went 3-7, which is not great. I don't love that at all. But, maybe we'll do better this week. Okay, into the predictions. First, I'm doing the top 5 teams, so maybe some boring games, but I will have timestamps in the description, and you can click on them and go to a game that you find particularly interesting. Okay, starting off, Louisiana Tech will travel to Clemson. Clemson is favored by 32 points in this game. I don't know, man. That seems like way too many points to me. DJ has been struggling. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. But DJ, the quarterback for Clemson, has been struggling. I don't think he's the guy. To me, Cade Klubnik, the backup, has looked far better in my opinion. And I think he'll eventually take over the starting job at some point in this season. But I don't see it. Clemson beat Furman 35-12 last week, and then they beat Georgia Tech 41-10 the week before. Struggled with Georgia Tech for a little while, though. Clemson's defense looks really good. Dabo Swinney's a good coach. Obviously, I'm not going to have Clemson being upset. Clemson wins, but I can't see them getting 32. 32 is way too many points, in my opinion. I think Louisiana Tech will keep it kind of close. I have 31-14. Clemson wins by 17. They do not cover, though. Next game, I have UConn at number 4, Michigan. Michigan is favored by 46 points, and that's for good reason. UConn, one of the worst teams in the FBS. Michigan, one of the best teams in the FBS. This is a clear mismatch that Michigan will take advantage of. I mean, obviously, I have Michigan winning this game. J.J. McCarthy, Jim Harbaugh, and the Michigan Wolverines will tear into UConn. And Michigan wins 49-3, barely covering, but they cover. 49-3, Michigan wins. Then I have Toledo at number 3, Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 31.5 points. Toledo's a very underrated team, very good group of 5 team, but Ohio State is Ohio State. Ohio State still has Ryan Day coaching them. They still have C.J. Stroud throwing passes. They still have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith-Njigba catching passes. So I have Ohio State winning, but I think they just don't quite cover. I think it's 42-13. Ohio State wins by 29. Then I have the University of Louisiana Monroe, or ULM for short, at number 2, Alabama. Roll Tide roll. Alabama is favored by 49 points. Alabama obviously coming off the game versus Texas. That was a nail-biter. Alabama clearly has some issues. I don't think it's quite time to hit the panic button, in my opinion. But Alabama certainly has issues. They looked undisciplined. 15 penalties for 100 yards, the most ever. They looked undisciplined. The offensive line didn't look great. The receivers couldn't get separation. The play calling was horrendous. Just undisciplined. Bad game from Alabama. They didn't win like most people thought they were. And I think some of that rage will carry forward this week. I know ULM had that 2007 upset. But to be frank, I don't think it's happening again. I think Alabama beats down on UOM. I have Alabama winning 63-10. Alabama wins by 53 and covers. By the way, I'm sorry if you hear my dog in the background. She's very, very bad. But last top 5 game, I have number 1 Georgia traveling to South Carolina in Columbia to the Gamecocks. Georgia is favored by 24 points, as they should be, the defending national champions. As you know, I'm very high on Georgia. I feel like that's a dumb statement. They're number 1 and they're defending champions. But, I mean, I am very high on Georgia. I think they have a good chance of going to the national championship game. The only thing that stands in their way is my Alabama Crimson Tide. Roll Tide, roll. But Georgia, obviously a good team. Stetson Bennett deserves respect. He's a great quarterback who gets disrespected a lot. Their running game, like always, is good. Their offensive line is good. Those tight ends and receiving weapons they have, whew, those are some. They look like they're made in a lab. Their defense is amazing, like always. Through 2 weeks of the season, they've held their opponents to a collective 3 so far. I think South Carolina is a little bit bigger of a test than Oregon or Samford. And I don't think Georgia covers, actually. I don't have them covering. But I do have them winning. I do have the Georgia Bulldogs winning. Give me 34-17. Georgia wins by 17. Spencer Rattler might make it interesting for a quarter and a half. But, and I like Coach Beamer, too. But Georgia will pull this one out. Georgia's too talented. Kirby Smart's too good of a coach. And that's too good of a team. Some other interesting games there are. Number 6, Oklahoma will travel at Nebraska. Nebraska obviously just fired their head coach, Scott Frost. Go watch my video on that. Should be an info card in the corner appearing right now. So go watch my thoughts on the Scott Frost firing. Mickey Joseph will take over as interim head coach. He is the brother of Vance Joseph, who used to coach for the Broncos. I know that. I don't know what he's up to now. But Nebraska, they've been falling on hard times, obviously. 1-2, lost to Georgia Southern last weekend. An embarrassing loss that was the final nail in the coffin for Scott Frost. But they still have talented pieces. Casey Thompson's a good quarterback. And it is Nebraska football, nonetheless. Then Oklahoma. Brent Venables, the new coach at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is undefeated so far. Beat Kent State last weekend. I think this will be a little bit of a test for Oklahoma. I know why Oklahoma is only favored by 13.5. Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback for Oklahoma, he's never quite been in an environment like Lincoln, Nebraska. That could keep it competitive, but I think Oklahoma wins. And I think Oklahoma will cover, too. Just barely. Oklahoma will win 38-21, and they'll win by 17, covering the spread. Then number 22, Penn State, travels down to the Auburn Tigers in Auburn, Alabama. Down to Jordan-Hare Stadium to play the Tigers. And I'm not going to lie, I don't want to get into it too early, but I have a clear winner in this game. I'm sorry, I know I'm biased. Penn State's favored by 3. I think that's quite the understatement. I see why, though. Jordan-Hare is a dangerous environment. If anybody knows that, it's me as an Alabama fan. Jordan-Hare is quite the environment. But Auburn, I'm not high on them at all this season. And I try to give teams credit even if I don't like them, and I certainly don't like Auburn. But I'd give them credit if they were good, but they just aren't. Brian Harsin is a crashing and burning plane. His seat is nuclear hot at this point. The boosters don't like him. He's not really winning football games. They're undefeated so far. They haven't played nobody. They struggled with San Jose State last weekend, losing at halftime, 24-16. And I'm not high on Auburn. TJ Finley's a decent quarterback. They have some decent pieces. I mean, it is Auburn football. I'll give them that. But I'm high on Penn State, too. I think Sean Clifford, James Franklin have a bit of a bounce bounce back year. I think they could go 10-2, 9-3, something like that. So I'm high on Penn State, not high on Auburn. Give me 45-17 Penn State wins, and they obviously cover. That might be a little bit too much of a win, but I think Penn State will blow Auburn out of the water. It won't be particularly close. Penn State wins. Then Mississippi State travels to Baton Rouge to play the LSU Tigers of the Louisiana variant. It surprised me when I opened this. Mississippi State favored by 1.5. Now I know LSU had some problems. They lost to Florida State on that block kick to start the year, and Mississippi State's undefeated. I do like Mississippi State. Will Rogers is a good underrated quarterback. Mike Leach with his air raid system hasn't exactly taken the SEC by storm, but it's decent. He's doing a decent job. And I like the team in general, but I have LSU winning this one. I think LSU's too talented. Brian Kelly was really... I'm not high on Brian Kelly at all. I don't think Brian Kelly's going to do good and all that, but I still have LSU winning. Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback. He hasn't really looked like that, at least against Florida State. LSU blew Southern out the water last weekend, but it's Southern. But my point, Jaden Daniels, I think he's a decent quarterback, and I think they have decent pieces. I mean, it is LSU football, always going to be competitive. I have LSU winning in an upset, 42-31. LSU wins. Then, number 11, Michigan State will travel to Washington to play the Huskies. This will be Michigan State's first test of the season. Mel Tucker, great coach for Michigan State. Michigan State has lost some pieces from last year. Kenneth Walker, their star running back they lost, that was a big identity of their team last year. And Washington has gotten better. Michael Penix Jr., I think he's a great quarterback. He leads the Pac-12 in yards and touchdowns, I think, right now, if I am correct. But I know he leads in yards, even with quarterbacks like Caleb Williams in that conference. I think Washington's a good team. They're at home. They're favored by 3.5. But I'm too high on Michigan State. I like Mel Tucker. I think he's a great coach. I think Michigan State's a good team. Give me Michigan State in the upset. I have 38-28. Michigan State upsets Washington. Then we only have 2 ranked versus ranked matchups of the week. One of them's the game of the week you'll hear about in a bit. But the other one is number 12, BYU at number 25, Oregon. The Cougars versus the Ducks. Oregon is favored by 4. BYU's coming off a big win off of Baylor. I thought Baylor was a really good team. I had Baylor really high, and I'm really shocked BYU pulled off the upset. That was one of the games I got wrong last weekend. Oregon didn't do great against Georgia week 1, but they did great last weekend, hanging up 70 on their opponent. They didn't exactly play top-tier opponent, but that's not the point. I don't like Bo Nix. Bo Nix, one of my least favorite college football players of all time. I don't think he's a good quarterback, but Oregon is a good team in there. They're Oregon football, they got a brand. But I think BYU pulls off the upset. Give me 38-31. BYU upsets the Ducks. Then, the game of the week, in my opinion. Number 13, Miami, travels down to College Station, Texas, to play the Aggies of A&M. I'm high on Miami. I like Tyler Van Dyke. I like Mario Cristobal. I think Cristobal's decent. I think Van Dyke is one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC, up there with Devin Leary and guys like that. I think he's a dark horse Heisman candidate, in my opinion. But if he is going to be one of those dark horse Heisman candidates, now is the game to prove it. Texas A&M, obviously coming off that big loss to Appalachian State. Texas A&M had the #1 recruiting class that they paid for. They had high expectations coming into this year. Some people said they were going to go to the playoffs and win the SEC. Those people are not the brightest tools in the toolbox, in my opinion. But no, Texas A&M favored by 5.5. This one's difficult. I've swung back and forth. Texas A&M at College Station, one of the most dangerous environments there is in the entirety of college football. But I think Miami will pull it out. I want to go back and forth, but I think Miami will pull it out. Give me 31-28. Miami wins on a field goal. Miami upsets the Aggies 31-28. And those are my predictions for week 3. Maybe I'll do better this week against the spread. And maybe I'll do better overall. I predicted a little bit more games, I think, if I'm not wrong. I think so. But tell me what you think. What's your most anticipated game of the week? If you're an Alabama fan, like most of my subscribers are, what do you think of us playing UOM? I know it brings back some ugly memories if you were alive in 2007. I was, but I was 1 year old. So I don't remember it, but I've heard about it. But my point is, just comment your thoughts. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What's your opinions? I read all the comments. Thank you for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Peace out.